Hello, this is Scott. I'm going to do a series of videos on the Thinkorswim Analyze tab. The Analyze tab can be used to do exactly what it says, analyze your current and future trades, both live or hypothetical. It can also be used to learn a particular strategy, be it a long call, um, put spread, credit spreads, etc. The thing I've discovered while I was learning how to use it was it can be a little intimidating to try to figure out how to use it, and therefore the benefits may be escaping you. If you go through this series of steps and learn how to use it, you will be able to much quicker learn how to use those strategies, how to apply them in a hypothetical sense, and be prepared for why you're selecting a trade and why you might make an adjustment to that trade along the way to manage it. So what I've discovered is when I was learning, I went out and I watched all the TOS videos on the Analyze tab. I went to YouTube and I found a bunch of videos that people did all on their own. And I found two things. I found one, there's the TOS videos and some personal videos did a great deal to explain some of the features or many of the features, but not so much how to use them, and maybe not in a particular order that allowed you to kind of roll in and start figuring out smoothly and easily what they were doing. The other side of the coin is you had people showing you strategies and not the features. And so unless you knew the strategies fairly well, and really had a thorough understanding of options, it was kind of hard to follow the concepts they were showing you. So what I'm going to do is something a little different. I'm going to do a series of videos. First one is going to be nothing but features and names and how to get around of the things you will use when you're or the pieces you will use when you want to analyze a trade. So that this first video will not be explaining to you why you would buy a particular option or series of options. It's only going to show you features and functions. That way, when we get to the next video, we're going to add in long call, credit spreads, put credit spreads, etc. And we'll actually analyze it and we'll use those features, and I'll explain why I've selected those particular items. There again, it'll only be one way to use those, but it'll get you a fairly good base as to how to use the Analyze tab so you can start analyzing the strategies um, and moving forward. So let me start running through the different pieces. The Analyze tab in itself has several subsections: add simulated trades, risk profile, probability analysis, think back, and fundamentals. We're going to focus on add simulated trades, risk profile, and think back. So I'm going to start over here with add simulated trades. And to clear up the screen a little bit for this, I'm going to drag this down so you can see more of the option chains available. So there might be one bit of confusion with this in that when you switch to the trade tab, it looks the same. With the exception of down towards the bottom of the screen, it doesn't have these sections called price slices or positions and simulated trades. That is intentional. It's by their design. The only difference is when you're in a trade tab and you come in here and you're going to select either, let's just say you're going to buy the stock, which you'd left click on the ask right here because that says underline. Left click on the ask. Notice down at the bottom the order entry tools come up. So this has put you in a position to set up your order and get ready to send it out to the market for a live trade. We haven't put that in yet. What you could do is if you wanted to analyze this particular trade, you could right click here, say analyze trade, and it'll move it over and put it in, which is this what this line is. We'll explain this in a little bit. It'll put it in the Analyze tab for you to analyze. Now it's in both the Trade tab, in the Order Entry book, and in the Analyze tab. That can be a little complicated for your first time through. And simply delete that. Come back over here to the Analyze tab. Now, the difference here under Add Simulated Trades, all of these features and functions are exactly the same up here at the top as they are in the Trade tab, but they only put simulated orders down here at the bottom. They do not put live orders at the bottom. Okay, so if you're uncomfortable with anything about could I accidentally make a trade, just stay on the Add Simulated Trades tab. Simple as that. So first we're going to focus on this adding a simulated trade, how to read the trade grid. Okay, there's several sections. I'm going to close them up right here so you can see these various sections. You use these little arrows to pop open the different sections that you want to look at. When you say underline, whatever you have in here, be it spiders or apple, I had it typed wrong, I just had to fix that. It loads in the underlying itself, be it an ETF, a stock, whatever, gives you the last trading value, the bid, the ask, the size, the volume, open, close, etc. So bid and ask, notice when I put my cursor over the ask column, the little buy appears by my cursor. I'm going to put it over the bid, sell. So if you want to buy or sell, you would simply click. Under here in the trade grid gives you several options. Go into that trade grid, option chain is what I wanted to open. The option chain opens up all of the possible option series that are available for you to trade in this particular case. So when you look at this, you see several things. Right across the top here, you see option chain, filter off, spread signal, and layout types. What you want to do is realize that this filter is a tool that you use to filter out all these different option chains. So if you want to trade a particular type of option chain and you don't want to look at all the rest, make it easier to look at, that's what it's for. For example, you see the word weeklies on all of these, and some don't have those weeklies. Well, that's because those are the standard monthly options. If you don't want to see the weeklies and the quarterlies and the minis, all you do is come in here, set expiration types, regular. You can choose which ones you want to appear, and as you can see, the list has just been filtered out. So now all you have to look at is the series you want to look at. And you can filter by days, expiration type, anything you want. We're going to leave them all up there so we can explain a few things. Next one, spread signal. This drop-down box has several selections, and we're not going to get into the different things here, but single is where it's going to start, and that's where we're going to work. And what that's telling you is it's going to simply display a list of every single strike price that's available for each of the option series. If you were to change this to, say, vertical, watch the chain change. It has changed, and over here it has changed to a two-legged price sheet, because now you've selected a vertical, which is a two-legged trade. But we're not going to go there. We're going to stay with single. So every single strike price is shown here. Layout over here, delta, gamma, theta, vega. These are the standard layouts that they have prepared for you, depending on the information you want to look at. You can always customize it. This is one that I've built that has a few extra columns in it. For demonstration, we're going to stick with the standard delta, gamma, theta, vega. Excuse me. So along this line here, notice calls are on the left. That's this whole left side of the screen. Puts are on the right side of the screen. Right in the middle, it says strikes. And often default, I believe, is 4. And you notice I have 4 lines there at the option series I have open. You can use this drop down, select 10. You can type in 12. You can do whatever you want to expose the number of individual option strikes in that particular series that you want to see. So now when you look at this information here, we're going to look at the black one first, because all the black ones are the standard monthly contract, expiring on the 3rd Friday of every month, with settlement being on the 3rd Saturday of every month. So what this tells me in the black one, May 15, this is a May 15th series. There's 26 days till expiration. Excuse me. And it's a standard 100 lot contract. Keep going all the way to the right. And here, if you put your cursor over it, it says implied volatility. So implied volatility, this is giving you the current implied volatility or the statistics on approximately where this option could go based on history and the current options being purchased, all priced into the market, at expiration. So 26 days from now, this option could go up or down 38.16% or plus or minus $10.31. And that'll put you in one standard deviation, or 68% of the time you can expect the price to remain in that range. And that's one tool you can use to select your options, because you want to put the percentages in your favor. Now when you look at these red ones, they say weeklies, and we'll look at the month of May. So you see May 1, 15, May 2, 15, then May in black, May 4, and May 5. May has 5 Fridays or 5 expiration series. So that's May 1, that's the first week. Options will be expiring on Friday of that week. They're May 15th, there's 12 days to expiration, standard 100 lot contract, and it's a weekly. May 2, it's the second week. All the same information. May 15th in black, it'll always be the third week. It's not identified as the third week because this is a standard contract. And 4 and 5. So just by looking here, you know there are 5 expirations or 5 weekly expirations in the month of May. One of which is, of course, the third week or standard monthly contract. Okay, so we're going to move on a little bit. I'm going to adjust the screen like this. And we're going to switch back to the spiders just for demonstration purposes. We're going to look at this May 15 monthly, but first I'm going to show you the next tab, risk profile. Notice only this top part of the screen will change. Price slices and positions and simulated trades will stay there. So I click on risk profile. Now a graph appears at the top. And this is the tool you're going to use to analyze how price changes over time, how excuse me, how the various Greeks affect you, etc. Today, again, we're going over nothing but features and functions, so you know what all these different things are. The next video, when we actually analyze a particular strategy, we'll walk through it, add it, and work it out. So, starting at the top left, you put in your underlying symbol here. Over here, you set up the lines on the chart, and you can change particular colors here. You notice there's only 2 identified, white and red here. Look in your lower left of your chart, and there's a little legend. And as you see, as I move my cursor, moving it back and forth like this, you can see not only the number next to the line where I'm moving back and forth is changing, but in the legend, you'll watch the prices change. The red line right now, you'll notice it says minus 433. The white line is changing as I move left and right. Well, you notice the red line is horizontal here, and the white line is a curve. That's why as I move them, you see those numbers change. Some things we'll look at use more than just 2 lines. This is where those colors will appear, or those lines will be identified. And in your legend down here, they will appear. So you can look at all of the different possibilities all at one time. If you want to change the colors of these lines, for example, this white line is a little bit hard to see. You could come in here, click on it, choose black, say OK. Now that line is black. Simple as that. Commissions. If you want to include or exclude commissions in the calculation, that is what this drop down is for. If you notice, if I choose include, you're going to see those lines change ever so slightly on the graph. And very, very slightly. I'm going to put that back to exclude. Plot lines. These options tell you exactly what lines are going to be plotted on the screen. This +1 at expiration, this is telling me there's 2 lines on this graph. This red one, this is what the P&L will look like at expiration. The black one is what they call the live line. And it's live because as you move your cursor, if you have executed this trade at any given point where you move the cursor, that's what your P&L would be. There are numerous other features. We're going to, just so it can be seen, I'm going to put in a different trade right here, or a different strategy, and I'm going to select date step 4 lines to show what it looks like. Now you can see we've added 4 lines, and there's a step. So as I increase the steps, what it's doing is it's putting that number of days between each of these lines. Notice the legend has increased to all 4 of them. So at a glance, you can look at 4 different lines, and each line is 7 days out in the future. So if you have 4 lines 7 days apart, you are literally looking at 28-day span in 4 different price slices, right, at any given price. We are going to stick with +1 on expiration and as a standard call. No stepping for that feature. You can also look at different things. P&L open. This is where we're going to be doing all of our explanations, but if you get heavily into the Greeks, you can look at all the Greeks, even down to P&L for the day, and look at those particular items. The tools work the same way, but you have to be focused on that particular item. The discussion of the Greeks goes well beyond the purpose of these videos. Probability mode. You have 3 choices: probability in the money, out of the money, and probability of touching. Probability in the money is this light blue section. And what that's telling you is if this vertical line, a dotted line right down the middle, this is your live stock price or your live underlying price, and what it is right now. So by expiration of that particular contract, you have a 68% chance of your underlying landing in this zone here. So that's your probability in the money. If you think about out of the money, that would be opposite, or the dark blue. Right across the top is your percentages. So between this line and this line where the light blue ends, there's a 32% chance that the underlying will end up in this area at expiration. 36% on this side, and 15 over here, and 15 over there. Notice if I change it to out of the money, the light blue and the dark blue change. You have to change your thought process. We're going to stick with probability in the money. Probability of touching is different because as a stock or an underlying fluctuates, the probability that it might move above and beyond this point or below this point is still very good, but because you have this 68% chance it'll end up here, it might go up a little bit and come back. So if you change this to probability of touching, you'll see that that light blue area expands. That doesn't mean that the probability is it'll stay there. It might come up here for one day and then the very next day drop back down to here. This is the advantage of these statistics. Over here, you can set your probability range. You can set it to 1 standard, 2 standard, or 3 standard deviations. This default is 1. I'm going to change it to 2. What you notice is it gets wider. And I can drag this axis, the price axis, and you see how I got more of what I wanted on the screen. And you can drag that back and forth and adjust the graph just however you want to see it. Standard would be 1 standard deviation or 68% probability. Probability date. First thing you want to do when you come into this tab is set this probability date to the expiration date of the series you're looking at. So we have chosen the 3rd week in May to explore. If you click on this calendar, the calendar always has the monthly expiration date highlighted. So just clicking in here, you know that that highlighted date is the 3rd week of May. 1, 2, 3. That's the last day of trading. Actual expiration date is the 16th. So if you click on the 16th, that is the official end of that contract or when it gets settled. Looking a little bit more at this chart, we already talked about the vertical dotted line down the middle, that being your live price. You have other vertical lines here, and we talked about those being set at 1 standard deviation. Those are coming from these price slices. And these price slices, you see there are 3 of them. You can add, subtract, adjust these price slices any way you want. The middle one is your live underlying price, and this one happens to be set for 1 standard deviation up or down. Over here, you can set those slices to many different defaults. For example, we are at plus or minus 1 standard deviation. If you wanted to be on a percentage basis, you could come up here and say plus or minus 10%. Plus or minus 10% is the actual default when you come in here with a fresh screen. Notice now those lines are way out here, but it still shows you where the 68% probability line is by color. So this all depends on you, how you want to do your choice. So to be clear, price slices, every time you put one of these lines up here, and you notice this is the horizontal axis for price, anytime you put a line in there, you're slicing that price. And right now we have this line, we have a plus 10% line, so there's a 47% chance that the underlying will end up in this area between or before expiration, by expiration. And verse versa, going the other way, there's a 51% chance that the underlying could end up in this area right here. I'm going to switch that back to, plus minus 1 standard deviation. So you see it move those dotted lines back here. If you want to see the graph a little better, you can drag it back and forth, right? You can adjust the price axis like that just by dragging on it. You can also drag the y-axis. Notice I'm trying to go up and down, but nothing's happening. If you change this to fixed y-axis, you can drag that y-axis any way you want and try to zoom in just a little bit more. So if you want more resolution, that's how you would do it. If you set it back to float, it's going to automatically scale that graph to fit in for whatever is on the screen, just like that. And usually auto scale covers everything you want to do. So back to the price slices. Now that we know they're there, if you want to add more price slices, for example, I'm going to add 1, and notice it added a 4th line. I think there's some support right here at 204, and I'd like to see what that line looks like. You just type in 204. Sorry, I typed in the wrong place. This is the offset column. We don't want to do that. We want to type in our price slice here. Over and there, you type in 204, hit enter. Notice it's drawn a line at 204. So you can add as many of these slices as you want, so you can analyze the different probabilities, however that works. Along in this price slice column, in fact, we're going to delete that. So you click here. You can reorder the price slices. Notice the one. Oops, sorry. Notice the one we've added, 204. Really, if it was numerical order, it would be right in here. If you click on here and say reorder price slices, it puts them in numerical order. That's good for visualization in this next piece we're going to talk about. Just for ease of the discussion, I'm going to delete, hopefully the right piece, that one we've added. I'm going to delete that slice. Now if you look across here, the price slices puts up some data: delta, gamma, theta, vega, P&L open, P&L day, and buying power effect. So the idea behind this is when you put an analyze or a strategy in the Analyze tab, you have 3 data points immediately to look at to see how your P&L would be open at this point, and this point, just by looking at that column. So that tells you if this stock price moves this way all the way up to here, that's what you're going to get. If it moves that way down to this point, you're going to get that. So you can adjust those price slices to see if a stock moves a little or a lot, how it's going to affect you, and how your theta decay, which is one of the most important things to understand, is going to affect you. Theta is time decay. So add as many price slices as you want. Below here is the simulated trades box. We'll get into more of this when we actually add the trades in the strategy overview videos. But effectively, you can add as many simulated or live analysis trades you want in this box and simply check or uncheck. Now none of them appear in the graph. If I want to look at just this particular strategy, I put that on. If I click that one, now I'm analyzing this particular strategy. If I have both strategies on, I click both checkboxes, this actually shows my P&L of the two together. Looks a little complicated, but it's not necessarily complicated. So looking back at strictly this single, now that we know this trade is here, it's a single. We're going to buy one contract of spiders, the May 15th, 206 call, and we paid $433 for it, or $433 because it's a 100 lot contract. Notice this horizontal line says minus 433, and it's 433 all the way. Well, that tells you that this strategy is capped at 433. If this is your zero line right here, anything above it is profit, anything below it is loss. So notice as I move my cursor and these P&L lines go up, my profit is going up the farther the stock goes. But if I come back over here and those lines go below the zero line, right, you see now I'm losing money. That's your P&L line. This is your price line. You can do other things in here, like you saw me type in 204. You can actually come in here and think about this and say, oh, let's say if the stock price is actually, or the underlying price is actually at 210, you can type that in and you see that move. Now that I've moved that line, it's a little easier to see. There's a red hash here, and there's another red hash over here. I'm going to unclick this lock to reset that. So you can see there's that red solid line there. This is where you've entered the position. This is your break-even point. So now you know that if the position we've executed here at this point, you need that underlying price to go up to 210.28 in order to break even. Notice that hash just happens to be right across the zero line right here. So anything above that, you're into profit. Those are two key lines. More lines will appear, the more lines you have on the chart. But it's just the same thing over and over again. Now, I did type in the value manually here. You saw it go up. You can also come over here and step through by days. So today is the 19th. This contract expires on the May 16th. So if I simply click, notice I moved up a day, and what you can visually see is that the outside marks of your percentage or your probability of closing are getting smaller. And that is because, and nothing else is moving, because the only adjustment we've made is time. Well, when you have less days available till the end of your contract, the probability of the underlying moving to that old higher price is less. Therefore, today we have a 68% chance of the underlying possibly going up to 215. If I go out a few more days and closer, you see the probability is only up to 214. So you can step through days like that and watch how it affects your theta decay. One of the difficulties people have often with the Analyze tab is the visualization of this price movement and where profit and loss is. Because typically you're looking at a price chart, and we're going to click over the charts like this, a price chart like this. So here, price is vertical on the y-axis, and time is horizontal on the x-axis. Well, when you're in the Analyze tab, price of the underlying is horizontal. That's because you are not looking at time, you're looking at P&L over here on the y-axis. Well, if you want to be a probability trader or understand your risks versus time, when you look at this, we've already divided this into the 3 price slices. Where the underline is right now, plus 1 standard deviation here, plus 1 standard or minus 1 standard deviation here. How do you visualize that on the price chart? You quite simply come over here, hit slices to chart. You're going to choose that chart, and that's going to move a copy of those 3 lines right over to the chart tab, just like that. So now, if you see that, that's where your stock price or your underline has closed, or where it is live if you're in a live market, plus 1 standard deviation, minus 1 standard deviation. So what does that mean? How do you work with that visually if you have a hard time? Think about it, this price chart in this way. I'm going to bring up the probability curve or the normal distribution curve, and this is how that works. This is, think of the median is where your underline is, and then this would be 1 standard deviation and minus 1 standard deviation, or your 68% probability in a given time period. You can go out to 2 standard deviations, plus and minus, and get 95%, 3 standard deviations, get 99.7%, etc. Now, if you haven't seen this before, this is nothing more than a grading curve. If I add our typical grading system, A, B, C, D, F, on the chart, you're going to expect 68% of the people in any given task to do average. A little less percent will do better, and a little less percent will do very well. Again, going the other way, a smaller percentage will do worse, and a very small percent would fail. So that is all the probability is telling you. It's giving you a percentage of probability or possibility of what would normally happen. So how do you work at that on the chart? Well, we're going to take that stock chart, in this case spiders, and we're going to take that probability normal distribution curve, we're going to drop it on there, and we're going to line up the price, and we're going to line up the plus 1 and minus 1 standard deviation, as you can see. So if you look at it sideways like this, now it might be a little bit easier to understand that plus and 1 and minus standard deviation, or the probability is 68% or 68.2% that that price between now and the end of our contract, which is 5:15 at that line, will end up somewhere in this area. And if you were to buy a longer contract, here is the contract for June, notice how the probability goes up, and that would be a wider range. The farther you go out, the more time you give it, the more the price has the opportunity to move. So that is the basic concept of transferring your visual from the Analyze tab, which is a horizontal price axis, to a price chart with a vertical axis. The difference between the Think Back tab and the Risk Profile tab is in the Risk Profile tab you can add simulated trades based on the current available options to look at and study. So you can put a trade in here and see where it might go. If you flip over to Think Back, the idea of Think Back is to go back in time and be able to place these same trades, any strategy you want at any point in history. So if I type on that, zoom out just a little bit on this graph, you can see how the price has gone up and down. You go back in history and you say, hey, what if at this point I bought a long call? How would that affect me? And so you would put that, what they call it, as a back trade. You put a back trade in here, you execute it, and it'll put in a profit and loss line. For example, this orange line is the P&L line for this vertical that I have here that I put in right at this time. If I change that to a long call, you can see what the P&L will do zoom out just a little bit. When you buy a long call at this point and the price goes sideways, notice your P&L, notice it over on the left, is very, very bad, right? But until that starts going up, suddenly now you're going to make some money, right? And you have to do that before when? Options expiration. That's what these vertical lines are. They tell you when each contract ends. So you look at when your contract ends, there's 516. Well, guess what would have happened? If I was at 516 right at this point, I'm minus $62. I would have lost everything on that particular trade. So that's the beauty of it. You can practice with a strategy, understand it, place it at any point in history based on the price movement, and say, if this stock is going down, what happens to me? If the stock is going up, what happens to me? And you can go, now I understand what the strategy is going to do to me. What I'm going to do is learn how to get in, get out, adjust the trade as price action moves. That is the main difference between think back and risk profile. Think back is history. You add think back trades based on time. So here we are in spiders. When we set this calendar, we're going to go back in time. And like, for example, this trade was back on 4/28 of 14. So if I come back in here and say, go back to 14, 4/28, I select that. All of the option chains that show up here is all the data from that point in time. So you can select a trade just like you would if it was live. That's the only difference between think back and risk profile. Offers a huge, huge possibility for studying options, learning a strategy, practicing it 10 times before you actually execute a real one, and getting prepared for how to protect yourself and how to get out, when to get out. So that's the overview of all the piece parts and form and function of the Analyze tab. Next video we'll move on, pick a strategy, add a strategy, and really talk about it in a little bit more depth. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. If you got any comments,